Welcome everyone to vpod.ai. I'm your host Mike, and joining me is our resident expert Susan.
Hi, everyone. It's really great to be here.
You can sponsor this podcast for just $25. Your message will be featured across major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and more. If you're interested, visit vpod.ai to get started today. So, I want you to picture someone in your life who is just the absolute picture of health.
Oh, we all know the exact type.
Right. Like they run marathons on the weekends, they eat exceptionally well, they maybe even spend their free time doing those intense obstacle courses.
Like crawling under barbed wire for fun.
Exactly, carrying sandbags up a mountain. To the outside world, and probably to themselves, they seem completely invincible.
Yeah, they really do.
So why is a person like that still at a massive risk for a heart attack?
It's a really jarring image, isn't it? I mean, we have this collective tendency to view peak fitness as this impenetrable shield against cardiovascular disease.
Because the logic seems totally sound.
Right. If you can run 26 miles, your heart simply must be perfect. But the biological reality happening just beneath the surface, deep inside the arteries, it tells a vastly more complex story.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how a spectacularly fit person's heart can suddenly fail, we really have to strip away the clinical jargon, right?
We do. We throw the term heart attack around so casually, in everyday conversation. But the actual medical term is myocardial infarction.
Myo meaning muscle, and cardial meaning heart.
Exactly. And infarction just means tissue death from a lack of oxygen. The mechanics of it are purely a matter of supply and demand.
Right, and just to be totally clear, it isn't just a generic attack or a cramp. It is literally the muscle tissue of your heart starving to death because its blood supply has been entirely choked off.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. The heart is a pump, sure, but it also needs its own fuel to do the pumping. And that blood flow is delivered by your coronary arteries.
Those are the ones on the outside of the heart, right?
Right. Early anatomists actually named them coronary because they thought these blood vessels looked like a crown encircling the top of the heart muscle.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. And these main arteries branch off into smaller vessels to feed very specific areas of the tissue. And one of the most critical of these is the left anterior descending artery, or the LAD.
The LAD, otherwise known by its terrifying but highly accurate nickname, the Widowmaker.
Yes, and it earns that nickname entirely because of the sheer geography it covers. The Widowmaker supplies such a massive surface area of the front of the heart.
So if that gets blocked...
If a major blockage forms in the LAD, the volume of muscle tissue that is suddenly deprived of oxygen is so catastrophic that it frequently results in sudden death.
Wow.
A blockage in a tiny distal branch somewhere else might cause a mild event, but the LAD, that's the main highway.
So what's actually causing the traffic jam on that highway? Because we hear about plaque constantly.
Right. The specific condition is atherosclerosis, where fatty deposits, so cholesterol, calcium, cellular waste, they build up inside the walls of the arteries over years.
And people just don't know what's happening.
That is the truly unnerving part of how atherosclerosis progresses. A person will often feel absolutely zero symptoms until a coronary artery is blocked by about 70%.
I have to stop you there because that number is absolutely wild to me.
It's a huge number.
70%. It's like the plumbing in a century-old house. You turn on the bathroom faucet, the water flows out looking perfectly normal, which totally masks the fact that the pipes behind the drywall are almost entirely rusted shut.
That's a great way to look at it.
Why on earth is the human body so incredibly bad at warning us before it hits that 70% threshold?
Well, it's because the body is an absolute master of compensation. It doesn't want you to panic over a gradual narrowing, so it adapts.
How does it adapt?
If a pipe is getting narrow, the network of blood vessels can slightly dilate in other areas, or the heart can pump with just a bit more pressure to force the blood through the narrowing.
So it just works harder.
Right. It prioritizes keeping you functioning today, right now. It won't send out an alarm for a gradual plaque buildup until the physical supply of oxygen literally cannot meet the demand of the heart muscle during exertion.
Which brings us to a crucial distinction. We know this plaque is building silently behind the scenes. But a classic heart attack isn't usually just that plaque slowly, gradually growing from 70% to 80%, all the way to 100% until it clogs the pipe like a cork.
No, it rarely happens that way.
So that's not the trigger for a sudden attack?
Not usually. If a plaque just slowly grows over time, what a person typically experiences first is something called stable angina.
Which is what, exactly?
It's chest pain that is totally predictable.
Yeah.
Imagine you walk up a steep flight of stairs, your heart rate goes up, it demands more oxygen, but the narrowed artery can't deliver it fast enough. You feel a strangling chest pain, but then you sit down, your heart rate drops, the demand drops, and the pain goes away. That is stable.
But a sudden catastrophic heart attack, what medical professionals classify as a type 1 myocardial infarction, is a totally different mechanism. It's actually a sudden biological betrayal.
What's fascinating here is that the catastrophic event is actually driven by your immune system desperately trying to save you.
Wait, really?
Yeah. What happens in a typical type 1 heart attack is that the plaque hidden within the artery wall becomes unstable and suddenly ruptures.
It breaks open.
It physically breaks open, exposing the inner contents of the plaque to the bloodstream. And your body senses this rupture as an acute injury, like a bleeding wound inside the vessel.
Oh, I see where this is going.
So platelets immediately rush in to form a massive blood clot to patch the wound.
It's a tragic irony. It's the clot that kills you, not the plaque itself.
Exactly.
It's like a security guard spotting a minor shoplifter. And in a total panic, he locks every single door to the building to catch the guy, completely trapping everyone inside while the building happens to be on fire.
That is a perfect way to visualize it.
The body's overzealous healing mechanism is what completely blocks the artery.
Yeah, the coagulation cascade happens so fast that the rapid clot formation drops blood flow to 0 in minutes.
And that's when the symptoms hit.
That's when the classic symptoms hit. The crushing chest pressure, often radiating to the left arm, the neck, or the jaw, shortness of breath, sweating.
And we absolutely must highlight that for women, the symptoms can be dangerously subtle, right?
Yes. Overwhelming, unexplainable fatigue or a feeling of severe indigestion, which tragically leads to a lot of misdiagnoses in emergency rooms.
And once that clot forms and the flow stops, the clock is ticking loudly. Irreversible damage to the heart muscle begins in as little as 20 to 40 minutes.
In cardiology, they have a saying, time is tissue. This is why emergency intervention is an incredibly fast, highly choreographed dance.
What do they actually do?
Well, if clot-busting medications aren't enough, they perform an emergency angioplasty. A surgeon threads a specialized catheter through the radial artery in your wrist or the femoral artery in your groin.
Wait, through the wrist, just picturing a wire traveling from my wrist up my arm and directly into my heart is incredible.
It is modern medical magic. They guide a microscopic wire right through the clot and the blockage, and over that wire, they inflate a tiny, high-pressure balloon
To clear it out.
to physically fracture the calcified plaque and compress both the plaque and the clot flat against the artery wall. It instantly restores blood flow.
Wow.
Then they deploy a stent, a tiny laser-cut metal mesh tube that expands and locks into place to keep the artery propped open. And this entire percutaneous intervention can be done in 20 to 30 minutes.
Unbelievable. So that is the standard playbook, the type 1 heart attack, ruptured plaque, sudden clot, total blockage.
Right.
But the story we're exploring today is a mystery that completely defies this standard playbook.
Yes, the case of a very fit athlete. Let's call him Jeff.
Jeff's story is wild. So Jeff is in his 40s, super active. In fact, just 4 weeks prior to this medical event, he had successfully run a full marathon without a single cardiac issue.
Which is no small feat.
Exactly. He trained, he ran the 26 miles, he suffered the usual existential dread at mile 20, but his heart was completely fine. But a month later, he decides to run a Spartan Beast.
And for those unfamiliar with the obstacle course racing world, a Spartan Beast is a trail half marathon interwoven with 30 grueling physical obstacles.
Now, as a quick color detail, I have to point out a hilarious side note about this. Apparently, Spartan races have gotten a little soft lately.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It used to be that if you failed a brutal obstacle like the infamous spear throw, which is entirely skill-based and totally drains your soul when you miss your penalty, was doing 30 burpees in the mud.
That sounds awful.
Now they've replaced the terrifying burpee penalty with these dainty little jogging penalty loops.
Well, I suppose doing 30 burpees at mile 12 really added an extreme layer of physiological stress to the event.
Exactly. But even without the mud burpees, Jeff is pushing his body hard. He gets to the monkey bars obstacle, he jumps off, and suddenly he notices his heart is absolutely racing out of control.
Right.
He's incredibly short of breath, and he's starting to get intense tunnel vision. But, and this is the key to the mystery, he has absolutely no chest pain. No crushing pressure, nothing radiating to his jaw.
Yeah, he rests for a moment and the symptoms fade slightly. He tries to push to the next obstacle and the symptoms roar right back.
Until he just can't go on.
Eventually, his body just quits. He is forced to his knees. Medical staff rushes him to the emergency tent. They hook him up to an EKG monitor, and the paramedic takes one look at the screen and immediately says, "You are coming with me to the hospital right now."
Meanwhile, his friends are waiting at the finish line, completely unaware. Cell service on the mountain is terrible. Finally, a single text message pushes through from Jeff. It reads, "I'm at the hospital." Not a joke. A fib.
AFib, atrial fibrillation. This is a massive plot twist in the context of a suspected heart attack.
AFib is atrial fibrillation.
Right.
So instead of the heart actually stopping or the plumbing getting blocked, the electrical signal just completely short circuits.
Precisely. It is an electrical problem, and it's the most common cardiac arrhythmia.
How does that actually work?
The human heart has 4 chambers. 2 upper chambers called the atria, and 2 lower chambers called the ventricles. In a normal, healthy rhythm, an electrical pulse causes them to squeeze in a highly coordinated, synchronized beat.
The top squeezes, then the bottom squeezes.
Right. But in AFib, the electrical signals go totally chaotic. The upper atria stop fully contracting and instead just quiver or flutter wildly out of sync with the lower ventricles.
So the pump totally loses its rhythm. And the immediate danger of AFib isn't necessarily a heart attack, it's actually a stroke, right?
That is the primary concern, yes. Because those upper chambers are just fluttering and not forcefully squeezing the blood out, the blood can stagnate and pool in the corners of the atria.
Stagnant blood clots.
It loves to clot. If a clot forms in the right atrium, it can get pumped into the lungs, causing a pulmonary embolism. If it forms in the left atrium, it gets pumped straight up the carotid artery to the brain, causing a catastrophic stroke.
So at the hospital, the doctors realize he is in AFib. His heart is racing dangerously fast, totally out of sync and getting exhausted. So they sedate him and they use the shock paddles.
A procedure called a cardioversion.
Right. To literally reboot the electrical system of his heart, shocking it back into a normal, steady rhythm.
And they succeed in restoring the rhythm, which is great, but standard emergency protocol requires them to run blood tests anyway, and the results show elevated levels of a specific enzyme called troponin.
Troponin. This is the ultimate smoking gun for heart damage. But wait, if AFib is basically an electrical glitch making the heart flutter, why is the physical heart muscle releasing distress enzymes?
That's the million-dollar question.
Is it like revving a car engine in the red zone for too long until the parts literally start to melt?
That is a very accurate analogy. Troponin is a protein enzyme stored deep inside the cardiac muscle fibers. It actually helps the muscle contract.
So it's supposed to stay inside.
It belongs inside the cell. It is only released into the bloodstream when those muscle fibers are so stressed and deprived of oxygen that their cell membranes literally rupture and die, spilling their internal contents into the blood.
So the doctors had a real mystery on their hands.
Exactly. Did his troponin levels spike simply because the rapid AFib heart rate exhausted the muscle to the point of cell death, combined with the physical trauma of the shock paddles? Or did a physical blockage cause a heart attack while he was in AFib?
They test his blood again a few hours later. The troponin levels didn't go down, they went up.
That is the turning point. Rising troponin means ongoing active muscle damage. So the next morning, they perform an angiogram to look inside his arteries. And they find a 50 to 60% blockage in his LAD, the Widowmaker.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the final diagnosis was not a typical heart attack. It was a type 2 myocardial infarction, secondary to atrial fibrillation.
Exactly. Remember the typical type 1 heart attack we discussed earlier?
Yeah, a plaque ruptures,
Yeah.
a massive clot forms, 100% blockage.
Right. That did not happen to Jeff. His plaque was perfectly stable. It didn't rupture. He just had a 50 to 60% narrowing that had been there for years.
So if the pipe wasn't completely blocked, why did part of his heart die?
Because of a severe mismatch in supply and demand.
Like we talked about earlier.
Yeah. The AFib caused his heart to beat so fast and so chaotically that the muscle's demand for fuel and oxygen skyrocketed to abnormal levels. But that 50 to 60% narrowed pipe simply couldn't physically deliver enough blood volume to meet that massive new demand.
So it starved.
The muscle starved not because the pipe was completely shut, but because it wasn't wide enough to handle a high-speed emergency.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here because this raises a massive contradiction.
Okay, let's hear it.
Just 4 weeks earlier, this exact same guy ran 26 miles, Running a marathon requires a massive demand for oxygen. Why didn't his 50 to 60% blocked Widowmaker starve his heart during the marathon?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of human biology, we arrive at one of the most miraculous adaptations of the body: collaterals.
Collaterals. I absolutely love this concept. Think of a city planner, right? The main highway through town, which is the LAD artery, is slowly getting backed up with traffic over a decade because of this plaque.
Right.
The city planner notices the congestion, so they quietly start paving dozens of tiny little side streets, back alleys, and detours around the traffic jam so the cars can still get to their final destination.
That is precisely what your heart does on a microscopic level. Collateral blood vessels are tiny new arterioles and capillaries that the heart physically grows to bypass a blockage.
That's incredible.
The biological mechanism is fascinating. If a main artery is narrowing, the surrounding tissue senses the slight drop in oxygen. It responds by releasing specific growth factors, like vascular endothelial growth factor, or VEGF.
And what does that do?
This chemical signal literally commands the blood vessels to sprout new branches and take up the slack.
But the paradox here is mind-blowing. Two entirely different things stimulate the heart to build these vital side streets, don't they?
They do.
The presence of dangerous, suffocating plaque buildup stimulates collaterals. But you know what else triggers that exact same growth factor? Consistent, heavy cardiovascular exercise.
Yes. Because he was a marathon runner, his heart had spent years adapting to the high oxygen demands of training by building a massive, highly robust network of collateral vessels.
His heart was exceptionally well plumbed.
That is exactly why he could run a grueling marathon with a 60% blocked Widowmaker and feel absolutely nothing. His microscopic side streets handled the marathon traffic perfectly.
But during the Spartan race, he hit the absolute perfect storm that broke the system.
He did. The underlying plaque was already there. But leading up to the race, he had been traveling. He was likely slightly dehydrated. He severely lacked sleep.
And the pre-workout, right?
Yeah, he had consumed a much higher than normal amount of caffeine from a pre-workout supplement. And caffeine in high, unfamiliar doses is a known trigger for electrical arrhythmias. All of these physiological stressors compounded to trigger the atrial fibrillation.
So the AFib pushed the engine so incredibly hard, so fast, that even his amazing exercise-built side streets couldn't handle the chaotic traffic.
Correct. The chaotic demand outstripped even his enhanced collateral supply, leading directly to the type 2 infarction.
Yeah, so what does this all mean? We know Jeff's plaque was the underlying culprit that the AFib ultimately exposed. So if we want to avoid Jeff's fate, we have to look at how that plaque gets into our arteries in the first place and what you can actually do about it.
It all starts with the delicate inside lining of your arteries, called the tunica intima.
The tunica intima. It's a lot like the slick Teflon coating inside a brand new frying pan, isn't it?
Exactly. Plaque doesn't just spontaneously stick to a healthy, smooth arterial wall. It only forms when that delicate endothelial lining gets damaged, inflamed, or irritated.
And what exactly damages it? Because it's not just bad luck. It's mechanical shear stress from untreated high blood pressure, literally blasting the walls like a pressure washer and causing microscopic tears.
Yes.
It's harmful oxidative chemicals from smoking. It's chronic, unmanaged high blood glucose from diabetes. Those jagged sugar molecules float around in the blood, physically scouring the lining and caramelizing onto the proteins.
Which creates sticky, inflamed spots where cholesterol can anchor. You combine any of those with genetics that predispose you to high cholesterol, and you have a perfect recipe for plaque.
Which is exactly why routine screening is absolutely non-negotiable, regardless of how fast your marathon time is or how great you look in the mirror.
It starts with simple annual physicals, checking your blood pressure regularly, getting a comprehensive metabolic panel, or CMP, to check your fasting glucose and organ function.
And a CBC, right?
Yeah, running a complete blood count, or CBC, to check for systemic inflammation. And of course, a full lipid panel to check your cholesterol broke down.
And if there are red flags in those basic panels, you can escalate to advanced screenings, like a coronary artery calcium scan, which is a quick, non-invasive CT scan that actually detects and quantifies hardened, calcified plaque hiding in your heart arteries.
Or a CT angiogram, which uses an IV contrast dye to give your cardiologist a highly detailed 3D map of exactly where and how severe any soft or hard blockages are.
But I have to step in and play devil's advocate for a second. Yeah. If you're listening to this story, you might be thinking, wait a minute, intense exercise and pre-workout pushed this fit guy right into a heart attack. Shouldn't I be terrified to go to the gym or run a race if I don't know exactly what's hiding in my arteries?
This raises an important question, but we absolutely cannot draw the wrong conclusion from Jeff's story.
Right.
Without his extensive exercise history, Jeff's situation would have been immensely catastrophic. If he had that 60% LAD blockage but was totally sedentary, he never would have grown that vast network of collateral blood vessels.
Oh, wow.
Without those collaterals, a much more minor stressor, something as simple as shoveling snow in the driveway or carrying heavy boxes up a flight of stairs, could have triggered a massive, fatal event.
That makes total sense. Exercise is the shield, not the sword. It lowers your resting blood pressure so you aren't pressure washing your arteries. It improves your cholesterol profile. It prevents the metabolic dysfunction that damages the tunica intima. And crucially, it builds those life-saving collaterals.
Yes, the takeaway is to keep exercising, but do not use your external fitness as an excuse to ignore your internal biology.
You can't out-train it.
You cannot outrun your genetics, and you cannot outtrain chronic arterial inflammation. Monitor your sleep, actively manage your mental health and stress levels, stay hydrated, and get your blood work done.
It really is a fascinating duality. Your fitness builds your resilience and buys you time, but the internal medical screenings give you the map of your actual risk. It's about merging the two.
Exactly. Knowing what is happening inside the vessels is what allows you to safely and confidently continue pushing the muscles on the outside.
Which leaves us with a truly wild final thought to ponder as we wrap up today's discussion. We just learned that the human heart is constantly, silently adapting to its environment.
Right.
It responds to the slow, suffocating damage of plaque, and it responds to the healthy, rigorous stress of running by building the exact same microscopic safety nets, those tiny collateral blood vessels. It's literally rerouting its own plumbing to keep you alive, and you never even feel it happening.
It's incredible.
Which makes you wonder, as you sit here listening to this right now, how many other microscopic, silent adaptations are working overtime in the shadows of your biology, constantly balancing damage and healing, keeping you alive completely without your knowledge?
It really is a profound reminder of just how brilliantly designed and remarkably resilient the human machine really is.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the hidden mechanics of the heart. Keep moving, keep asking questions, and we will see you next time.